As the database administrator, you may be asked to create logins and passwords for new users on the SQL Server. And just a little bit of background first. SQL Server has a multi-level security and credentialing system, and it is tightly coupled with the Windows uh, security model. The Windows obviously has domain and local logins. SQL Server has SQL Server logins and roles. And then there are database level users and roles and application roles. This information will be available in the code snippet. So let's move on to creating a login. The first thing you need to do is give an individual or an application access to the SQL Server instance. Creating a SQL Server login does not give the login access to anything within the instance, but it will at least get you through the first door. Use master, and let's create a login from a Windows domain account. So I'm going to create this login. It's Map Sapphire, agate / Map Sapphire from Windows. I'm going to then create a SQL Server login. Two types of logins. So this login I just created from the Windows domain account is effectively a pass-through. The login that I'm going to create now, the SQL Server login, is a standalone login and needs to have a password. It does not inherit the password from the Windows domain account. So this is going to be a SQL Server login called Michelle Test. In case I ever wanted to get rid of it, it's just drop the login and give it the name. Now, logins have to have passwords. Again, if they're created from a Windows domain account, it inherits the password from the Windows domain account. If it's a SQL Server login, you've just created the login. But the user ID gives access to a specific database and is tied to a specific database, and a user ID has to be connected to a login. It cannot stand alone. So in this case, we're going to use the database called CIAC. I'm going to create a user Map Sapphire for the login Map Sapphire and going to give it a default schema called DBO. I don't have to have the username the same as the login name. They can be different, as in this second example. It's not the best idea. It makes it a little bit harder to trace, but you can certainly do it. And to drop the user, you can just use a drop user command. The logins, you can see them here under Security and Logins, Map Sapphire and Michelle SQL. To find the user IDs, you open up the database, you go to the Security segment, and for users, you're going to refresh, and you're going to see Map Sapphire and Michelle SQL. To give these, just because you've got a user ID now, doesn't give the user any specific capability, so you have to assign that capability. And in the database itself, we have multiple roles. The most common is data reader and data writer, and the ability to execute stored procedures. The bad news is there's no execute stored procedure role. So how about we create a role by saying, let's use CIAC. I'm going to create a new database role called DB Executor. I'm going to grant execute privileges to the executor. I am then going to add a user to that role of executor, of database reader, data reader, and data writer. And now my user, agate Map Sapphire, can execute and read and write data. And that's it for now.